I believe environmentalists have missed the mark. They have missed the enemy that was right in front of their faces. And they have used demagogy to fight a straw man, namely global warming, in order to justify the maximum state intervention and attract a host of politically biased and highly ideological short-term supporters. However, when we research, analyze, develop and study the theory of the cycle, we see that the Austrian analysis of the cycle points directly to the cause of environmental damage. Free market environmentalism is a discipline which emerged over 25 years ago, thanks to a group of theorists who sought a way to combine the approach of the Austrian School of Economics with the analysis of the public choice or Virginia School, and some contributions of mainstream property rights theory. In 1993, we published in Spain a paradigmatic book that represents this movement. The authors of the book are Anderson and Leal, and it is titled Ecologia de Mercado. The original English language version is called Free Market Environmentalism. The main conclusion the theorists of free market environmentalism reach is that the best way to preserve the environment is to extend entrepreneurial creativity and free market principles to all natural resources. This requires their complete privatization, along with an effective definition and defense of the corresponding property rights, basically through private defense agencies, which would be the ideal. Or in any case, if we start from the current institutional framework, a true definition and defense of property rights via the legal system currently in force in each country at each particular moment in time. These theorists reach the principal conclusion that if there are institutional barriers to the correct definition and defense of property rights concerning environmental resources, and thus to the allocation of these resources based on the spirit of entrepreneurial creativity characteristic of free market processes, then economic calculation regarding such resources is impossible, and we are doomed to see them poorly allocated, and the environment harmfully overexploited. There is a factor which, at the time, escaped the notice of these theorists, and I would like to discuss it now. It is another major cause of the poor use of natural resources. And it lies precisely in the undue strain placed on the real economy during the stage of euphoria, the speculative bubble, or irrational exuberance, whichever term you prefer. This strain results from the monetary expansion, the money substitutes, and the fiduciary media for which the fractional reserve banking system is responsible under the orchestration of a central bank. As you know, in spite of the recurring financial crises and economic recessions which afflict the economy, all of the incentives in the current financial system work together to encourage the continual repetition of credit expansion processes. Credit expansion is a sort of binge, and it is very attractive from a public, a social, and a political standpoint. Delighted bankers rush to lend newly created money backed only by bank accounting entries made for deposit, which consist of unbacked fiduciary media. The process is orchestrated by a lender of last resort, the central bank, which allows it to take place. This is what Mises referred to as passive inflationism. Bankers eagerly woo economic agents and entice them to apply for loans at the bank. We have all experienced this in the past. They have flooded us with letters. Practically no collateral has been required. If you receive a steady paycheck, we will give you this and that, up to 50, 100,000, 200,000 euros, at ridiculously low interest rates. Entrepreneurs are quick to invest in projects which appear profitable at such extremely low interest rates, and with such little collateral required. Also, in accordance with the theory of capital, these investment projects will mature in a more distant future. The Austrian theory of capital is perhaps the central puzzle piece theorists need to comprehend the process. Though somehow they are beginning to sense what is happening. It is only under the illusion created by artificial manipulated conditions, low interest rates, artificial credit expansion, and little collateral required, that the investment projects entrepreneurs undertake appear to be profitable. Entrepreneurs rush to invest as if real saving had increased, when in fact it has not. They embark on projects in a spirit of great hopefulness. But sooner or later, harsh reality reveals that these cannot be completed and are unsustainable. Moreover, in the area of the environment, the focus of my remarks, what goes unnoticed is the unnecessary strain being placed on the environment and the huge price it pays as a result. In what sense? Well, in the sense that trees are uselessly cut down. The atmosphere is polluted more than it would have been had the economy not been subjected to such stress. Rivers are contaminated, mountains are excavated. Cement is manufactured unnecessarily when mountains are excavated to build quarries, etc. And minerals, gas, oil, are extracted at a rate they would not have been under normal circumstances, outside a phase of artificial credit expansion. All of this takes place for the sake of producing capital goods, which, I repeat, cannot possibly be completed, are produced in error, and have the wrong geographical and, what is worse, temporal distribution. That is, these capital goods materialize in places they should not be and at times that are unsuitable. It makes no difference whether we are talking about the Keough Towers, the 4 towers built on the Real Madrid's old training grounds, the Empire State Building, or the pyramids of Egypt. There is an enormous malinvestment. In other words, the cost of carrying out those projects, the opportunity cost, far exceeds the value of what is built. The thing is that we suffer from the illusion Bastiat identifies in his famous article, "That which is seen and that which is not seen." We see the towers and the pyramids, and we say, "Oh, those are so beautiful." And sooner or later they do end up being put to economic use. Believe it or not, the Keough Towers have ultimately been rented. However, they were built 10 years too soon. It is just as serious an error to build 500,000 apartments nobody wants on the coast, as it is, for instance, to build the Real Madrid Towers 5, 7, or 10 years before they should be built. This is what I am referring to when I talk about a geographical and a temporal misallocation in the capital goods structure. Eventually, the market imposes the criteria of consumers. We must remember that these investments were financed not with citizens' real saving, but simply with newly created money in the form of deposits, which acted as collateral for the loans granted. To give you an idea, and speaking in aggregate and relatively rough terms, for a very long period of time, the investment rate grew at an annual rate of around 10%, while the savings rate was around 0%, and was even negative in the United States during many periods. How can the investment rate possibly increase at a rate of 10% in the absence of any increase in saving? The answer is that investments are being financed with newly created credit expansion, and deposits, mere accounting entries, are acting as the collateral. Thus, there is very clear and obvious intertemporal discoordination in the behavior of economic agents. Entrepreneurs are full of optimism and are investing at a rapid pace, while the rest of the citizens do not wish to increase their saving to make those new investment projects sustainable and to permit their completion. Instead, they wish to go on consuming at the same rate as before. Sooner or later, that maladjustment or intertemporal discoordination is uncovered by the market. That marvelous process which we all take part in, and which, as we know, is very efficient in dynamic terms. Dynamically efficient, but not in static or Paretian terms. We are already familiar with the specific processes by which the market detects that intertemporal discoordination. They are the 6 successive processes we studied in Chapter 5 of my book, Money, Bank Credit, and Economic Cycles, and we will not go into them now. The important point is that the leading role in that analysis is played by capital theory, which most of my colleagues lack, and as a result, most analyses, even those we have seen to be on the right track otherwise, contain significant gaps. When the market detects that many of the loans have materialized in erroneous investment projects, then it becomes clear that the value of the loans is a fraction of what was thought. In short, the market reveals that banks' assets are worth much less than was assumed, and because banks' liabilities remain the same, and basically are in the form of deposits the banks created during the credit expansion process, as soon as the market detects these errors, a financial crisis immediately hits. The market discovers that the vast majority of banks are insolvent. In other words, they are unable to fulfill their payment obligations. As the theory of the cycle explains, the initial symptom of the problem is a financial crisis. The financial crisis is more or less dealt with. We have already seen this happen. Immediately afterward, we must face the harsh reality of getting down to work at the microeconomic company level to try to salvage what we can and restructure, reallocating productive factors on a massive scale from unviable lines of production, where they do not belong, and have been taken in error, to other viable lines of production. And that is precisely the economic recession which we are now experiencing. The result of it all is that we have become poorer. Another result is that we have unnecessarily damaged the environment, because we have extracted a large quantity of resources to produce things which are not desired and are not needed, and are going to end up either rusting, being misused, or being put to a second-best use. If we had known beforehand that these projects were not profitable, we would not have devoted so many resources to them. Ultimately, in net terms, there is no doubt that serious harm has been done to the environment, and this would not have occurred had the process of economic development rested on genuine saving and been driven by entrepreneurship in an institutional design framework of a financial system based on general legal principles, a system that is therefore sustainable. What does this brief analysis lead us to conclude? Well, there are two conclusions. First, during the bubble stage, we are all happy, and no one is able to diagnose the damage being done to the economy, to the allocation of resources, and to the environment. Also, the economic theory predominant up to now belongs to the set of allied interests that encourage the binge. Think, for instance, of the harm caused by the entire neoclassical theory of finance. The second conclusion is obvious. Nature lovers should defend a free monetary system. A monetary system without a central bank. That is, without the financial central planning agency that is the central bank. In such a financial system, all economic agents, including private bankers, would comply with the law, and if they did not, they would have to go to jail, by way of either the state system or the constellation of private agencies in the ideal anarcho-capitalist model, as Rothbard rightly states. For general legal principles indicate that anyone who counterfeits paper currency in the form of deposit certificates for amounts exceeding the money actually deposited, or who creates from nothing a demand deposit in the absence of any actual deposit, is a criminal. He or she is a criminal who violates the principles essential to peaceful and harmonious social cooperation between human beings. Furthermore, this criminal participates in a systemic process of misallocation of resources, which distorts the fundamental signals that guide human beings in their voluntary cooperation with others. This process gives rise to economic cycles. Dear students, we must repeat this again and again insistently. Moreover, in this area, a direct and very clear connection exists between economic science, ethics, law, and history, all of which point in the same direction and toward the same conclusion. That is, there is a connection between the legal and ethical analyses, bearing in mind the possible differences between them, and, if you prefer, considering them together, within my theory of the three-tiered approach, the historical evolutionary analysis and the scientific analysis.